Hey guys, welcome to another commentary done by Diggity Up. Right in corner we got Manadog starting as the Grey Protoss. Wow, Grey Terran. Sorry, Manadog. Bottom right in corner we got Flash starting as the Teal Terran. This is going to be on Radeon. And I want to get several shout-outs out of the way at the early stages of this while I can. One, I want to give a big shout-out to Zen, who organized the entire thing. And for speed's sake, he very, very cleverly set out the... And I just think this works a lot better. He set the maps out ahead of time. And I think choosing Radeon as the opening map is brilliant because it has more of a tendency towards macro play. It's not, there is a possibility of cheese, but I think it's a little bit harder to cheese on this map simply because of the size of it. So in theory, the better, longer, how do I put this? In StarCraft speak, if you can macro, that tends to be a better sign of skill in comparison to your ability to cheese, although every once in a while you will end up with a player that's just phenomenal at cheesing and can go very, very far with that. Actually, there's the old MSL player Silver, who arguably won that MSL championship on the map Monty Hall, the old version. But anyway, so that's the first shout out, I think. But anyway, it's sticking on this line of logic. Larger macro maps, in theory, favor the more stalwart, the more skilled, the more experienced player, and also to get knocked out round one to just early game cheese, just drop the lower bracket would be pretty brutal. So I think having Radeon, the big macro map that has a tendency to punish cheese, or at least cheese has to be extra creative to be successful on this map, I think that's a brilliant choice. So with that out of the way, I also want to give a big shout out to FlashFTW. I was devastated to not be able to attend this Starcon. It's the first one that I wasn't able to attend, the one in LA, because I didn't know about it. I've attended all the rest since. I wasn't able to attend this one mostly due to travel fatigue and also work considerations and several other considerations. By the way, really fast, looks like both players have opened up with a refinery barracks and they're going clockwise and counterclockwise, so neither player are going to end up with a scouting information advantage, at least initially. But I was very concerned I would not be able to make it, and therefore the early stages would end up not casted. But I knew that Flash going there, being an old school caster that he is and very skilled at it, would be able to cover, and so I felt a lot better about not being able to make it, if that makes any sense, specifically because Flash was going. That being said, of the casters who casted on the main stage, I was really impressed by Rice Hat, I gotta say. I don't know if he's gonna get wind of that, but I thought he did a fantastic job. Looks like we have a second Marine queued up for both players, by the way. They were going into factory, start talking about the game in earnest. I feel like I'll speak about, I've been debating how to talk about the players at this tournament. And I think I will stick to the Chobo, Hasu, Gosu Pro League format as far as skill level, rather than C to S, because honestly I'm not sure who's where on the ladder entirely. But I will say that Flash arguably is a solid, and so it's kind of like upper Chobo probably could go to low to mid Hasu, if that makes any sense. So there's kind of a range of players that you can beat. I think that's very true of a lot of Brood War skills. It's a range. By the way, we're seeing an initial Vulture constructed from Flash, but the command center a little bit earlier here from Manadog. Otherwise, not a lot of variation in builds. 3 factory Vulture is the meta these days. It's kind of the bread and butter of Terran. I think it's particularly interesting on this map, SV making its way around. Let's see if it's able to scout anything. Looks like it's going to get wiped out before it's able to see that initial Vulture. The barracks floating out, and it looks like the SCV is going to be able to get in for Flash, so sees the Vulture, sees the factory, and sees the lack of machine shop critically, so knows that it'll be continued Vulture from here. Flash getting a little bit later. Actually, this is kind of an interesting aspect of Terran versus Terran that's really accelerated recently, is the barracks liftoff and the scouting information with the barracks and the initial 2 Marine. I think that's why players have opted for 2 Marines rather than a single Marine early, is specifically to deal damage to that initial barracks to try to mitigate the amount of information it's able to glean and potentially take that barracks out, which then has implications for additional factories that you're able to plant. Looks like we do have a machine shop dropping down in a second factory for both players, and this is looking like it is movement toward, I think this is movement towards 3 factory Vulture, as things are just kind of getting initially stabilized. Now the next question is do you go mines or do you go speed? It looks like Flash already investing in speed here. This is a large maps and Vultures can do very, very well. It is and kind of interesting. I like how Flash is placing this 3rd factory. It'll be a little bit more of a challenging macro because obviously you've got to reach here and then click all the way over here. But what that is going to do is the entry point of the barracks will be so first it wants to check the units stacked here, but you can see where finding that 3rd factory could be challenging for Manadog, and that might lead Manadog to believe that it's only 2 factories, where in the meantime, the 3 factories are in close proximity for Manadog, so might have a little bit less information in that regard. Side thoughts on Vulture versus Vulture combat in TVD, particularly on larger maps like Radion. I almost wonder, it looks like we do see a speed upgrade for Manadog, by the way. I do wonder if it's advantageous to engage at closer proximity, where I wonder where the line is effectively, where it's like, okay, the reinforcement point is going to be to my favor, at which point I might be able to turn around and overwhelm my opponent with fewer troops, if that makes any sense. So I can build them later, but have them in larger number at the closer reinforcement point, because that would be an interesting optimization, I think, and we'll see if that's what ends up happening next in TVD down the line. So Manadog diving into the natural expansion. I think he might have gotten a little bit, I think he wanted to actually move that angle a little bit earlier. This is going to cost him some barracks health. He critically did see that there's no second gas, so he knows that it's likely not Wraith play. Flash, in the meantime, got the full eye full. Single Marine, only a single Marine dedicated. Looks like the second Marine making its way up. And you can see this barracks, how much information did Manadog... I don't think Manadog's even going to be able to see the factories. He should have an idea that it's 3 factory, with those 3 vultures making the way out across the map. But this barracks is at a decent risk if these Marines stay on top of it. Flash, in the meantime, has the mine upgrade, and he is speeding towards the front. Looks like Flash is going to be able to have more health on that barracks and probably get it up over that cliffside edge. You could actually use it aggressively as well. We'll see more vultures making the way to the front, and it looks like he wants to get a large minefield in front of Manadog early to establish theoretical map control. In the meantime, mine's not yet upgraded. We have an initial siege tank, which will help blockade. I'm actually surprised that I'll be interested. Oh, never mind. Flash is going to go ahead and push forward and engage initially. Again, keep in mind this is potentially at a deficit. Has picked off 1 Marine, not able to pick off the second Marine. Wanted to make sure his barracks stayed in the air potentially. At the 415 mark, Manadog moving out and still pecking away at that barracks. In the meantime, the barracks has moved over the natural expansion for Manadog and is able to get that information. But Flash wants to keep this barracks up, and so continually engaging. Now that that siege tank is here, he's not going to end up winning this fight. And it looks like that barracks is in the red, so it is burning. Maybe also Flash was hoping that the Marine or siege tank would be drawn into that minefield. In the meantime, still going ahead and dropping a lot of troops there to the front. He's got a 4th factory up, so he's going to go very unit heavy here, and actually dropping a 5th factory on top of it. He's going for an all-out assault, the majority of which is primarily going to be vultures in composition. He's getting, it looks like Manadog working his way towards +1 weapons, by the way. So Manadog making his way out. So the plan here from Flash now is to push up against his opponent, lock him into 2 bases, and be in a position to grab a 3rd base before Manadog is able to, and then end up with a surging economic lead past that. And Manadog is going to be, so he's producing siege tanks. Now keep in mind, siege tanks do very, very well against vultures, and +1 will help towards that effort. But he's going to be down 2 additional factories worth of production, likely of vultures. And actually, as I say that, never mind. Flash going to turn and drop 2 additional machine shops to switch into rapid, massive siege tank production to close the siege tank count gap. And so, and with the mines out in front, it looks like the, brought an SCV to the front to repair that barracks as well. Make sure he doesn't have to rebuild that. Manadog trying to move out. 2 siege tanks get wiped out. That is a massive, massive loss. Is he going to continue pressing into this? Another mine almost exploding on that siege tank. Flash maintaining proximity, and the last siege tank wiped out for Manadog. So now Manadog has only a single siege tank left. And that is more or less playing into Flash's hands. That tank's sitting back and sieging. But all of a sudden, with this siege tank on the field and triple siege tank production in the background for Flash, this is going to end up, looks like a single Wraith out here for Manadog, by the way, pecking away at the Marine. It's going to try to cycle around and get a shot at that siege tanks. Flash a little bit distracted right this second, so is not repositioning the Marines to help deal with that Wraith. It looks like he is doing so right this second. This could also be a little bit troublesome where you have offensive mines that might end up, if there's an additional Marine or a siege tank that gets on top of there. I wonder if a dropship would be a good play here for Manadog to potentially clear this minefield, but also create chaos, just Marine drop, instead of worrying about additional Wraith. The Wraith is making its way down. It's heavily damaged, though. We already have an army and a couple Goliaths out for Flash, so I don't think he's going to be too worried. By the way, when I say Flash, just it's short for FlashFTW, not the actual Flash yet. He's on the way, though. He's on the way. But we already have, so siege tank's not fully in position yet. I'm wondering if Flash is trying to bait Manadog into something. This is about an even fight minus the Wraith. Comsat to go ahead and clear some mines. Additional siege tanks moving up, and now we have a Goliath along that edge as well. And with these 5 siege tanks, the mines nearby, and the enclosed position, Manadog in a bit of trouble. Seeing that that position's enclosed, Flash going ahead and grabbing that 3rd base. And he's going to take a massive economic lead, and Manadog in a lot of trouble because he's going to have to walk into an entrenched position to try to break out. And he's already invested a little bit in Wraith, but they're mostly going to be negated by Goliath. Looks like some Goliaths moving to the north just in case the Wraith were thinking about escaping somewhere out in the field. We also have a Vulture sneaking around just to make sure that a sneaky base was not grabbed out on the map. But everything going in Flash's favor. Manadog's pressing out, bringing SCVs as well to try to compensate. Is managing to get the siege tanks sieged up, but the Vulture's right there, and Manadog recognizing that this is too tough a position to breach out, instead going to GG right there. Flash is now up 1-0. By the way this works, in case it wasn't clear from the previous round, the initial matches in all the matches in the upper bracket are best of 3 until I believe the semifinal, then it's best of 5, and then grand final I think is best of 7. Don't quote me on that. It might also be best of 5, and then whoever won the upper bracket gets an additional win. I think that's the way they're going to play it, just so they don't end up doing 2 full sets. But once you're in the lower bracket, it is 1 win and you're out, or 1 loss and you're out. And I also, hopefully I'll be able to put together not sure if I'll put together a spreadsheet or something like that to kind of list all the players that are in the tournament and where I would rank them prior to this tournament, not in the midst of this tournament. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for listening.